Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us for our second webinar, Keep Calm and Plan On, Event Management Amidst a Global Pandemic, a Virtual Perspective. I am Lauren Moore, Senior Account Director at IMN Solutions, and I will be your moderator today. Before we get started, I want to personally thank all of our clients, vendors, industry partners for their incredible support over the last few months as we navigate the ever-changing landscape of our beloved hospitality industry. Your kind words, phone calls, and notes of encouragement have added a much-needed smile during some very hard days, and we are very grateful. A big thank you to Mac Productions for providing the live broadcast and production for our webinar today, and to Ingo for their social media marketing tools that grew our webinar attendance and brought some of you to us today. As we look ahead to the future of meetings, both in person and virtual, and perhaps a hybrid model, it is important to understand that events that took place in March and April will look very different than events that are happening this summer, regardless of how they are held. To get an idea of where everyone in the audience is today in the world of virtual, we posted a poll prior to the webinar, and we're excited to talk about the results a little bit later. We are monitoring the chat box, so please feel free to engage and we will get to your questions towards the end of the webinar. We have a wonderful group with us today for our discussion about a virtual perspective. Let's meet them. First, I would like to introduce Stacia. Stacia is the Associate Vice President of Events at the National Association of Landscape Professionals. NALP's National Collegiate Landscape Competition normally attracts 800 students and 120 exhibitors. Stacia and her team had just over 3 weeks to make the decision to turn their in-person event into and launch a full virtual meeting. Next, I would like to welcome Lisa Levine. Lisa is the Chief Executive Officer at Energy Bar Association. The Energy Bar Association annual meeting and conference normally attracts 500 attendees. Just like Stacia, Lisa and her team had just 3 weeks to make the tough call and go fully virtual. Our next panelist is Laura Henry. Laura is the Director of Conferences and Events at the National Head Start Association. Laura's national conference traditionally attracts 3,500 attendees, and she had just 2 weeks to pivot her citywide conference to virtual. Our final planner on today's panel is Jennifer Hoff. Jennifer is the president of Taffy Event Strategies. Jen and her team at Taffy took just 3 weeks to convert Coverings, a global trade show for tile and stone, which normally attracts over 25,000 attendees, to a fully virtual experience. Rounding out our panel today is Quinn McMurtry. Quinn is the creative director of sales and services at Mac Productions. His team is producing our event today. Mac Productions specializes in live event production and has been live streaming for nearly a decade. They use a variety of platforms and have a number of key technicians and IT support staff to handle almost anything. To date, they have broadcasted well over 10,000 plus attendees. Laura, Lisa, Jen, and Stacia. All 4 of you had to quickly cancel your live event slated for this spring and turn it into a virtual experience almost overnight. Let's talk about this process a little bit. Laura, I know you and your staff self-produced your entire live conference. What did your virtual program look like compared to your live meeting design?
Well, we kept the conference at 3 days, but we did change the timing to 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern to be respectful of the different time zones. We also condensed the content offerings. So we scaled back from about 160 sessions to 42. And we shortened the time lengths from 60 to 90 minutes down to 45 minutes. Traditionally, we run about 15 to 20 concurrent breakouts during each block, but we chose to only do 3, and that was really due to staff capacity. And to choose those 42, we immediately surveyed the attendees to see what subject areas were most important to them so we can make sure to deliver the most relevant sessions. Each session had a dedicated staff member as a producer, The producer was responsible for rehearsals with the speakers to make sure they were comfortable transforming their in-person session to a Zoom session. And then the day of, most importantly, they were there to monitor the chat box, which was huge because there was lots of engagement, to moderate Q&A at the end of the session, and to be there to troubleshoot any tech issues that could potentially pop up. We also recorded the sessions, which we don't do on site due to financial constraints, but we're allowing attendees to watch for 30 days afterwards to make sure that they can see any of the sessions they missed. This has been very fruitful for us. And then just as we do on site at our plenaries, we had fun music playing before and after each session, including the breakouts. We made sure there was never any dead air time, which was really great. It kept people motivated and engaged and ready to start the sessions. However, we were leery about networking events and how they would transfer from in-person to Zoom. So we did revamp our welcome reception into a family movie night, which was really fun and well attended, but we did scratch the rest of them. But then their most important thing, besides having producers, which was definitely key, was we had a Zoom account open for the full 3 days, and we called this the lobby. And that's where attendees could pop in and out and ask our staff any questions. We had it fully manned the whole 3 days. They could engage with other attendees. They'd meet people in the lobby and start chatting with each other. Or they could just hang out and watch our rolling slide deck. We had music going, and the slide deck had information about our conference in the 3 days. And they also had pictures that we had asked attendees to send us of themselves watching the conference from inside their homes, which was really fun. So the chat boxes would go crazy about, oh, I see Lucy from San Diego, so good to see you, or see themselves. And then we called this the lobby because we wanted it to really emanate the lobby of the registration desk, which is where you would mingle with your friends that you haven't seen or meet new people and ask all of your questions to our registration staff.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Jen, can you share your live virtual meeting comparison as well?
Sure. We have a trade show that is for 25,000 people, and the exhibit hall is the focal point of the event. And so what we decided to do was, instead of just focusing on the educational sessions, which we offered, is the week of our event, we promoted going into the event for people to come to the website and see the different elements of the show that we had converted to a digital or a digital component. So throughout the week, we had sessions, and each day we focused on a different segment of the audience because it's so vast. So the first day may have been for architects, the second day for contractors, etc. And then we wanted to showcase our celebration of the industry. So we did a video for our awards program, and we engaged the young professionals through a session on development, and then ended with a happy hour. And we created an environment where exhibitors could upgrade their directory listings and then also connect with attendees through our A to Z program.
Thanks, Jen. That's a great idea for such a large show, and pretty impressive that you're able to convert it to virtual in such a short time. Lisa, how about you? Let's talk about your transition from in-person to virtual.
Sure. Thank you for inviting me. Our meeting is smaller than the ones talked about already. We went from 500, if it were face-to-face, to 300 virtual. And we did it entirely staff-produced with a total of 3 staff members. We took a 2.5-day live event to a 1 full day that was 9 to 5. For us, the most important part was the networking. And so we used Zoom, and we needed to, we also provide CLE credits, so the continuing education credits for our members. So we did not do concurrent sessions because we were concerned that we wouldn't be able to manage those from a production point of view. And our program ran, as I said, 9 to 5. We did a couple of different breaks throughout, and during that time, we had our members go into Zoom breakout rooms, and each room was no more than 10 people. We tried to have leaders in each room to keep the communication going. Some of the rooms were really successful and they had a great opportunity to network. Others not as great because people did actually take a break and leave their computer at that time. We had a keynote speaker as well as panels going. All of our Q&A was managed through the moderator of each specific session, and they used the private chat feature in Zoom to get the questions. We also at lunchtime did a live awards presentation and was able to actually showcase the award winners with their awards, which was neat. And then at the end of the day, again, to keep things interesting, the last session we opened up with a Q&A, and we unmuted everybody so that they could ask their questions directly to, that panel was led by reporters, so they could ask their questions directly to the news reporters. That people really liked. And then the other thing that we found that was really well received was using polls throughout all of the sessions. The feedback on that was excellent, and people told us it really helped to keep them engaged throughout a full day program.
Wow, 3 staff members to run the entire show. I'm quite impressed. As most of us know, that seems near impossible, especially with just 3 weeks to plan. So kudos to you and your team for that. Stacia, let's talk about your virtual meeting comparison to the in-person event.
Sure. So the 3-day in-person National Collegiate Landscape Competition was scheduled to take place March 18th through 21st in Michigan State. In the virtual environment, we went live for 2 days from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time each day. The in-person event has several components. It has a career fair for students and a number of workshops and education provided at the event. It also includes several networking events and competitive events, and those are very much digging in the dirt type of competitive events. In our virtual event environment, we were able to provide a career fair in which we retained about 40 of the 120 exhibitors. We offered 12 pre-recorded workshops, an NALP resource center, and a major sponsor showcase. Thankfully, we retained almost all of our sponsors, which was fantastic. We ended up with about 325 unique participants, 154 of them being students from 38 different schools. Unfortunately, as mentioned, given the hands-on nature of the competitive events, which is a very big draw to this competition, we weren't able to replicate those in the virtual environment. And given the turnaround time to produce the event, we didn't delve into networking opportunities within the platform either.
Thank you so much for sharing. We're going to touch on the production of these virtual meetings a little bit later, but I want to talk to Quinn really quick and just if you can share from your standpoint, maybe how difficult it must have been for all of these organizations to either self-produce their show or, even with a vendor, the limited number of staff that they had. I'm just kind of blown away by the amount of work that went into this. And if you can maybe just touch on that and that part of it, that'd be awesome.
Sure, Lauren. I think there's one thing for certain is that event and meeting planners are some of the most resourceful people on the planet. Hearing these case studies, the stories are amazing. And I think there was a poll out a couple of years ago where they listed meeting and event planners as being one of the most stressful jobs in America, right behind like firefighters and a combat soldier or something. So it certainly shows that it's a resourceful group of people, and it's amazing hearing the stories and how you guys were able to pivot so easily and quickly. That being said, you all had to be quick studies of these platforms, this software, and you had to come up and be resourceful and figure out those limitations of the software and what you guys could accomplish. And I just want to say I'm just impressed with everyone. And it goes without saying, it's a testament to the profession. That being said, we are still finding that as we go further down this road of getting deeper into the programs and trying to come up with more virtual solutions, that we need a great deal of, or planners need a great deal of support still. And it's helpful to have that AV provider to continue to kind of delve into the software, help find solutions for the programs as they move forward. And there's just so much uncertainty that it's good to have a partner with an AV partner, and to, once you find those limitations of the software, what can we do to improve it? So that's kind of where we leave it off.
Thanks, Quinn. And just from, I think, our experience today prepping for this webinar, I think we can all testify to the benefit of having some tech support on the back end and just a comfort level there. So great thoughts. I wanted to go back quickly to the poll that we took at the very beginning of the webinar, just to kind of get an idea of where our audience is today with their virtual planning. So 8% of you answered that you were kind of just starting to think about virtual. 23% had said you offered some kind of basic virtual option, be it a webinar or something like that. 20% of our planners on the phone said they have completely pivoted to virtual or are planning to, and 31% are offering in-person with an immediate backup to hybrid. So they're including that live element into their meeting. So that's really interesting to hear. And I think we're going to touch a little bit on the hybrid part of it later. But now I'd like to talk a little bit about the budget and finances, knowing that they're a big consideration for all meetings. I'd like to talk about the pricing and refund strategies that each of you implemented for your attendees, given the impact of COVID-19, and maybe the impact it's had on your membership, and ultimately what that did for your attendance. So I'd like to start with Lisa and kind of get her thoughts on that.
Sure, thank you. Typically, our event is between $950 and $1,200 per person. We held the event on April 15th, so we didn't really have a lot of other models to look at. We just charged half of the rate, so $600 across the board. Again, they did get the continuing education credit. And we did record the entire program, and they would get the recording afterwards as well. In hindsight, we think that was a little too high. We think we would have attracted probably more if we took it a little bit lower. And then from an expense point of view, our expense was very, very minimal. It basically was the upgraded Zoom. And otherwise, we had very little expense. We did all the graphics in-house. So we did make a profit on the event, but did not reach our budgeted profit goal.
Great, thank you so much for sharing. Laura, can you talk about yours, since your meeting was a little bit different in scale and size to Lisa's?
Sure. So we significantly lowered the registration rates, and we only offered 2 different fee levels. We took everybody who was registered for the in-person conference and gave them a discounted rate of $259. Our in-person registration fees were anywhere from $550 to $1,000, depending on when they registered. We gave them all $259 and then took the rest of the money that they paid and turned it into a credit voucher to be used towards a conference for 1 year. And then we opened the conference to the full field at a slightly higher price of $359. We're so glad we did this because it shot our registration up about 35%. And this allowed members that have never been able to attend, whether as in financial constraints, they weren't able to travel, or they didn't have the time to take. It gave them an opportunity to get a taste of what we do. So that we feel will be very fruitful for us in the future, and that people will want to come now in person and make the effort and motivation to come. We had about 10% cancel, which we're very happy with. Most of them accepted the full credit voucher to be used within 1 year. We had very few that really insisted on a full refund. We did make a point to ask attendees in the post survey how they felt about the price and the value they received for the price. And based on their responses, we really feel we could have gone higher, which is the opposite of Lisa. We were really sensitive because we turned it around so quickly and people were upset. We didn't want to sticker shock people, so we went on the conservative side. But we ended up offering more credit hours than we would have in person based on the condensed schedule, because we weren't taking long breaks or lunch hours. So we really feel we could have justified it, and we think in the future we'll raise the price.
Wow, that's interesting. Two very different perspectives and different results from an attendance standpoint. So it's really great to hear. Quinn, I'd like to have you kind of talk about how important it is to have confidence in the production and content and overall just aesthetics of the virtual meeting, and kind of how that plays a role in, what to charge for your meeting, and from a production standpoint and just overall from a aesthetic standpoint.
Well, I think it's very important. First of all, you don't want your attendees to have buyer's remorse or sticker shock, so you have to kind of plan accordingly. And I think a good part of that is having a virtual mindset when you go into this, because there may be some expectations of your attendees that they may be wanting something or expecting something, which typically can't be delivered virtually. So you come up with a number of options that allow the attendees to enjoy their experience. And, from a production standpoint, we want to work with the presenters and make that experience better for them, make the presentation better for them, make the lighting look better, make the audio look better, and that translates directly back to the attendee. And so if you have some production qualities and you keep that in mind, although it's virtual, you kind of deliver that back to the attendee, and the attendee feels that they've gotten their money's worth. So I think that's very important.
Thanks, Quinn. And I think that, as we move forward and we talk about meetings into the fall, and even early next year, a lot of those questions about pricing are going to come up. The planners that are on the panel right now had to pivot so quickly. And so they had to make decisions, almost immediately. And so I think as we move forward, I think that pricing question is going to come up quite a bit more. And I think the expectation of kind of the production and quality of virtual meetings is going to change. So I think that'll definitely impact the pricing structure as well. Stacia, let's hear from you about NALP's budget and pricing, the impact it had on your virtual meeting. If you could share kind of your experience with us.
Sure, thank you. So we went bold on this. We really wanted to, because this is such an important event for students, we wanted to be able to provide them with something to replace NCLC. It's something that they look forward to every single year. So we actually made the event free to students and faculty. We ended up refunding all of those fees from the in-person event. We also decided to refund all exhibitors and sponsors that did not want to participate in the virtual environment. We talked about attendance for our event a little bit earlier. We do wish that student attendance had been higher, but we also recognize that this was such a stressful time for students. Many were moving home. They were managing the transition to online classes. There were concerns about internships and just COVID-19 in general. We did hear from a few of them after the event. Some of them did end up getting internships or jobs because of our virtual event. So that was definitely a success for us. I won't bore you with all the financial reconciliation of the event, but I will state that NALP did experience positive financial implications from this event. And a lot of that is due to the strong relationships that NALP staff has built with exhibitors and sponsors over the years. Had we not transitioned to virtual, NALP would have experienced a substantial financial loss.
Thank you so much. You made a really good point when you talk about the importance of having good exhibitor relationships. And I'd like to explore the difference in sponsorship and exhibits as you transition to a virtual environment, and kind of how you provided value to your sponsors and exhibitors and just exposure in general, knowing that it's incredibly different from being in person. So Jen, let's start with you, since your show is primarily focused on the interaction with exhibitors and sponsors, and that really important piece of it.
All right. Well, we didn't want to take anything away from any exhibitor. So what we decided to do was they normally have an exhibitor directory listing on the website, and if they were on site, people would look at that on the mobile app and be able to understand what products they were offering. And what we did is we encouraged them to update their listing and enhance their messages through that. And we added on a feature where they could upload a video. We didn't charge for this, but normally they could, if during the normal show, they could upgrade their directory listing with a gamut of options starting at $600. But for the virtual, we pushed people to look there and didn't charge the exhibitors. We also had a new product showcase gallery that we highlighted and promoted as part of our digital experience.
Well, that's great. I think talking about just the $600 price tag that you essentially, gave them for free, that in my eyes as a sponsor exhibitor, I mean, that's a pretty good value add. And, just those relationships that you have up front are so vitally important. And so, really appreciate you sharing that with us. Laura, can you talk a little bit about how you handled your sponsorships and kind of provided the value add for your sponsors and vendors?
Okay. We were really lucky. Most of our sponsors stayed with us. And it's the same as Stacia said, it's the relationship building that our team has done throughout the years. And their answer, as soon as we said, we're moving virtual, was wonderful. How can we help? We're so glad we're still doing it. Unfortunately, only about 25% of our exhibitors stayed with us. And the ones that did, we offered them the ability to send a little commercial that we played after our sessions, and we also played in our lobby. Or we could give them a dedicated email message to send to attendees. The people that chose those really found value. So I think now we have the statistics to provide people should we need to do this moving forward. And we also will be looking into a formal exhibit hall. We just didn't have the time or capacity to research it and execute it the right way. So we didn't want to cheapen the experience for the exhibitors or the attendees. So we were pretty lucky on the sponsor side, have some work to do on the exhibitor side.
Wonderful. I really like the ideas of the commercials, and I think we'll probably get some questions about those. I know I have questions that I certainly would like to chat with you about. Quinn, any additional ideas from just a tech perspective or things you've seen that are successful with kind of providing a value add to these sponsors or exhibitors?
Yeah, I think I kind of look at it as there are two options. Sometimes there's the high-tech option or a low-tech option. And I have to admit, I love the idea of an avatar going into a building and maybe someone sponsors a little area of this virtual reality setting. I mean, it might get old after a while, but I think that's kind of an interesting idea, and it can have. I think it can be fun for people to do initially, but again, I still think you need to kind of go back to you want to actually touch and feel something and talk to someone. And so I also like the low tech option. What I heard of a group that just recently they sent frozen flavored ice cubes to everyone, and they had them prepare their own drinks live virtually with the frozen flavored ice cubes, and little things like that I thought were a nice touch, they pivoted and came up with another option. As opposed to having a booth, they sent the product out to everyone, and they could still, touch it and feel it and experience it in a tangible sense, and also in a virtual reality as well. So I really thought that was good. And as always, like I said before, I think videos are a great option and kind of a tested, tried and true way of doing it.
Awesome. I think, that whole sensory piece of the engaging the attendee, when you're virtual, it's really hard to feel engaged. And so I love the idea of sending a sensory item, engaging them with a drink. That's really, really cool. Stacia, I'm going to ask a question with you, since you mentioned kind of the importance of having good exhibitors, and kind of just get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, again, I mean, we're so thankful that our exhibitors and sponsors stuck with us and decided to take a risk with NALP in such a short time frame. We were asking so much of them in the 3 weeks that we built the platform. We provided them with exposure throughout the virtual environment. We had signage in all of the different rooms. Logos were prominently displayed. Some even offered workshops, and they all committed to being active on chat during the live days. So they were all very committed to what we were trying to accomplish. I do recommend just staying connected with your exhibitors and sponsors. Bring them in early if you're able to, and let them see the platform. Allow them to dabble in it prior to the live event, so they feel comfortable and understand how they're going to act with participants. I think that will go a long way.
I think that's really important, and something we've discussed kind of as a team at IMN is, making sure that when you're transitioning or making the decision to transition to virtual is kind of taking stock of your sponsors and exhibitors, because it's likely that they've been involved in other virtual meetings, especially if you're in a large industry, and kind of getting some feedback from them on what has worked and what hasn't worked, and kind of making sure they're engaged in the process. So I think that's such a great idea. Something you guys have all touched on today was that you kind of had to divide and conquer the tasks among your staff. Even, Stacia, you with a platform. I'm thinking you might have outsourced some pieces of the virtual meeting, especially as we look forward to potential hybrid meetings. So, Lisa, what components of your annual meeting would you have preferred to keep in the virtual conference that you had to take out because of staff limitations? And what parts would you have maybe outsourced to kind of take some pressure off of your 3-person staff that, really you guys kind of did everything with?
Sure. Well, I would bring back the concurrent sessions. That definitely going forward we would do, and our staff now feels comfortable with that. In terms of what I would outsource, well, I would outsource the whole production of the program. It was a lot. It was a huge learning experience, and I think the learning experience was great for my staff because it was helpful. We did training with all the different speakers and panelists. And so I think it was helpful because we were learning it as well. And so we were right up in front in understanding their challenges and being able to navigate it with them. But yeah, and given more time, I would definitely try and outsource as much as possible.
Awesome. And that's great to hear. Obviously budget has a lot to do with that too. So, we all would love to probably outsource as much as possible, but it's great to hear that there can be a really good balance. And like I said, I'm incredibly impressed with what you were able to do, self-produce with such a small staff. Stacia, I know you were able to actually bring a platform in, due to an existing relationship you had, but with more resources or time, really, I think for you, what live content or features would you have implemented that you weren't able to, even with the platform that you had?
So I think that we would have, in the platform that we used, we would have liked to have incorporated a video chat function in the environment. We did some evaluations after our event, and we did feel as if the majority of the people really needed that face-to-face contact. So we would have loved to have offered that. With more time and planning, I think we would have liked to have done some live sessions. Again, all of our sessions were pre-recorded, and a lot of the exhibitors and sponsors and the workshop presenters, produced those for us. We didn't really have much to do with putting those together, but we did provide them in the environment. I've heard so much since we held this virtual event, the potential for roundtable discussions and networking opportunities. And honestly, I would have loved to have been able to explore how to potentially incorporate some of those competitive events that I talked about. Plant identification, like how could we have incorporated that into the environment? And with more time, I think we could have transformed some of those competitive events into something virtually, but we just didn't have the time or the resources to be able to do that in the 3 weeks that we had.
Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. And what parts of these virtual meetings that we've discussed do you think that you and your team could have, taken off their plates to make easier and offer maybe a more polished and interactive production?
Sure. I think one of the things that we've tried to do is, it all goes back ultimately to that attendee experience. And I think as we explore these platforms and we try to make them do certain things virtual that we're kind of used to experiencing in kind of our tangible reality, what we've tried to do is take a lot of that worry and stress, just like we do during the live events, and to try to take that off your plates and to use the tried and true hardware integrations that we can supply. So quite often right now, we're trying to do everything virtually through a software program. And one of the things that we've done here at Mac Productions is that we'll use a number of hardware interfaces to be able to take a lot of those attendee experiences or a lot of the AV controls or the AV media to make the experiences better for the attendees. We will integrate hardware options into that, and we also we provide best practices for the presenters, and we've been able to, through those best practices, trying to help with the production, with the look and the feel for the actual visual of it, and that allows the attendees to kind of enjoy that overall experience overall. But again, it comes right back down to the attendees, and it's not just one platform can't do it all. And so what we've tried to do is come in and apply just the standard AV best practices into a live event, whether that event is on site or whether it's virtual.
Great, and I like the fact that you mentioned the hybrid and live event portion of it too, because what's I think is so important is having a vendor or a live production company that can do both the in-person and the virtual, because having to make that call very last minute, like a lot of you did, it would have been probably a little more seamless if you had a live provider who could have very easily transitioned your event into virtual. So Quinn, I think you make a really great point about the attendee experience. And that was really important to Jen and her team when moving their clients' huge trade show to virtual. So Jen, I'm hoping you can talk a little bit about how it's not so much maybe about the platform that you use, whether it be Zoom or GoToMeetings or a developed integrated system that one of your vendors creates, but more about what the attendee sees and feels while attending the meeting. So I'd love if you could touch on that for a minute.
Great. As I mentioned before, when people are putting together these events, there's a lot of focus on the learning sessions. And we did pay attention to that, and we segmented those out by day, by type of audience participant, and offered CEUs and did all of that. We did scale back the number of learning sessions, but we took a step back and thought, why, when somebody is at an event that's live, what other things are they coming to experience? And as I mentioned before, celebrating the industry. And a lot of shows do that through awards programs, celebrating their young professionals, and key icons in the industry, bringing the industry together with the exhibitors and the excitement of new products and the offerings of that. We also focused on trends and press conferences. We had 5 different press conferences, as just like we would at the live event. And what we did is we took a step back and designed the website around these key elements. So where during the week you could attend the live sessions and sit through them, just similar to what we're doing now, but you could also engage and revisit the experience by going to the website and looking at the engaging with the exhibitors and delving into some of the on-demand content that we also added, and just really drinking it all in. We've also done some post communications related to the event, to just drive people back to the website. So it's more than just sitting in front of the screen for a couple hours, couple days. So we wanted to really give them an opportunity to engage with the event.
Great. And I think it's really important to kind of talk about designing, the experience for the attendee rather than just focusing on the content too. Obviously, that is the most important part. But as we move forward, the actual experience of your attendee is going to be so really important. So all of our planners with us today had to make such a quick pivot to virtual, and you all did such a great job. So kudos to you. But as we get closer to the fall and even into 21, there is an expectation for more attendee engagement. Like we talked about, higher quality video streaming, a robust virtual exhibit hall. So it's incredibly important to make sure you're setting realistic budgets, engaging with your vendors, and even involving your IMN account directors who can provide strategic guidance and offer insight into what's currently going on in the virtual front. We'll have to consider things like social distancing for general sessions, stage sets, and perhaps the use of, in-room hotel channels to, potentially provide some networking, maybe have wine and cheese delivered to everyone's room while they watch a presentation or something along those lines. So Quinn and his team have been designing some incredible stage sets, room layouts for their clients to assist with the live piece of the transition, and then creating behind the scenes speaker prep and management packages to ensure not only successful speaker performance, but also just a comfort level. And I think we've all probably experienced that a little bit today. So Quinn, if you could quickly share some of these with us, that would be awesome.
Sure. One of the key things that we wanted to do is to, like I said before, we've integrated some hardware options. And so we've really tried to make the presenter a priority as well. And by being able to have this hardware integration that allows us to do something we call a minus mix, or we can talk to the presenters and not have the attendees hear things or things that are being said. And so it kind of gives that comfort level and makes a better experience for the presenter and also for the attendee. Because we know that this virtual world is going to be with us for a while, and we're going to, as we evolve into more of a hybrid experience, this is going to be used more and more for live events. And that being said, with the social distancing, we've really made a big effort to be proactive on our end to design sets that meet the CDC standards for social distancing. And now that's still a fluid situation, but it's been important to us to start thinking proactively on this and coming up with ideas, working with the event planners and all the parties involved to come up with a solution. We just don't want to have a situation where it's just appearing and we're reacting. We're trying to involve the creative process to come up with a solution as well, not just have a government bureaucracy kind of dictate something. We're following the standards, but we're trying to design these beautiful sets which space people further apart, or put the stage in the center of the room and have the audience surround the stage differently, divide the audience up in quadrants maybe come up with a way of entering and exiting, which might be different. But we just, we love live events, and our goal is to continue with this in the near future. And, we're not going to accept things being totally virtual. I think we're social beings and we need to see people, touch people, and be present. And we want to be proactive with that. And so we've been very active in working with our clients, trying to design sets that are going to look safe and be compliant with those regulations.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, this is a question kind of for everyone. So I'd like to talk about kind of as you look back, what is one thing that you would change if you have to plan, another virtual event or even a hybrid event? So Lisa, let's start with you.
Sure. I would add the concurrent sessions, and instead of holding one full day from 9 to 5, which is quite a lot for anyone to sit in front of a computer, I would hold it over a couple of days.
Great. Jen, what about you?
I would think about, we're all probably experiencing what I call Zoom fatigue, and thinking of different ways to present content, and what are some other things that are resonating out there in this world as we're sitting in our houses, like the Some Good News thing, or there's mini documentaries. One of my friends does a three ideas in 5 minutes video a couple times a week now. And just thinking about ways that people aren't getting overdone and making it more engaging and interesting.
Thank you. Laura, do you want to touch on maybe something that you might have changed?
Yeah, we would not have canceled the rest of our networking events. I think people craved them. We assumed people would be zoomed out and want to check out at 5 o'clock, but on day 3, our numbers were still steady, and we wish we would have had our traditional closing late night dance party we call Afterglow, and we think people virtually really wanted it. The chat boxes were full of, we don't want this to end, keep the music going. I think we lacked that closure that we usually have. And also time zones. I think people assumed we were in the Phoenix time zone, which was our in-person event location, versus we're based in DC, so we did it Eastern. So I would make that as clear as possible.
That's a great point. I think it's something that as we're planning, we often forget, since everybody's normally in the same time zone. So that's a great point. Stacia, what about you?
I think it's hard to limit it to just one thing. I think since we've had our virtual event, I've been on so many webinars, and I've learned so much about, what we could potentially do in the future. Hearing from Laura that she had incorporated music into her event, that was one of the first things that I had said to my contact for our platform was, when you walk into an opening session, you really want to hear something, like get excited, and incorporating music into your platform is I think huge. Mindfulness, wellness into the environment, explore how to incorporate gamification and raffles, and just trying to keep people energized within the platform, I think is so important, so that they're not just sitting behind a computer poking around, really engaging them in the platform. And how to do that. So just more exploration in those areas.
Great, thank you. We've gotten some questions in, so I want to kind of jump into those real quick. Laura, since you just mentioned kind of your networking events, one of the questions that our viewers had was about your family movie night and kind of just how you made that happen, the execution of it, logistics behind it. If you could talk about that for a second.
Yeah, we promote it as you're home with your families. Bring them to the session. We were lucky enough to get access from NBC to premiere the Council of Dads show, and then we did an interview with some other actors and incorporated it with people of our membership. And so we asked questions and talked about what it's like being a parent at home, what they are looking for from a teacher. So we were really lucky to have that insight. But we streamed on Zoom. It took us a while to get it right technology wise, but we just promote it as bring your family to this session.
Well, I think it's incredible that you had the opportunity to premiere a show. I don't know that we would all get that lucky, but it's a great idea, really, to engage the audience and include their families. I think, we're all at home, stuck or not stuck with our families, and being able to involve them in the work that we're doing, I think, is so important. And I really, really love that idea. Another question we have, and this is kind of for everyone, so I'll let you guys jump in. Did you evaluate your meetings any differently in person than you did virtually, with a survey or anything like that? Did that change at all, or did you kind of use the same tools that you would have used, whether it was an in-person or a live event? Jen, what did you do?
We did do an after survey for the sessions, and then some of the analytics through the website, because we were drawing a lot of people there, and through our A to Z platform that we used for the directory listings. We also worked with Ingo, so they also have analytics. So we piecemealed together a bunch of different results and analytics. But I think as we're all going through this in a learning experience, we're going to all get really better at figuring out what wants to be measured and how we can constantly be improving.
Great. What about you, Stacia?
We used the same tool. We used SurveyMonkey to survey the folks that we did 3 different surveys. We did one for students, one for faculty, and then one for exhibitors, because we did want to, ask different questions of the 3 different segments. We were able to pull a lot of analytics and data from the system as well, and look at all the chats that went on. So that was, something that we didn't have before. I mean, you could really kind of delve into what people were asking, what questions they were asking. Mm-hmm. But we used SurveyMonkey just to ask very short, succinct questions.
And I'm actually going to jump into our next question, because you both mentioned the analytics piece of it. And our viewers want to know kind of, looking at those analytics, were you able to determine kind of the best or highest attended time of day for your meetings, as we talk about kind of the length of a meeting and whether it should be 5 hours or 6 hours? Was there a specific time frame that you tended to have the highest engagement or attendance throughout the event? Laura, did you have analytics to see that, or is that something you guys looked at?
We did. We were pretty consistent throughout the whole time. We joked it was one of the highest closing session attendance we've ever had, because people really didn't drop off. I think probably 2 hours in, the opening sessions were always hot. We started an opening and closed in a closing session together every day, and then the 4 hours in between were breakouts. So I think about the second hour of breakouts after this opening session was our probably highest time every day.
Great. Lisa, did you guys see any, popular times as far as attendance went? Or I know you said you would probably have adjusted your times a little bit. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Right. Well, we did after the meeting had some feedback that the West Coast folks were not thrilled to get on at about 5 o'clock in the morning, but our attendance held very strong all day, which was surprising to us. And in hindsight, it would have been great to have some sort of closing party, as others have said, because everybody did they wanted to just chat at the end and celebrate, because we were one of the first who did this, and they just wanted to celebrate the success. And we didn't really have that. We didn't expect that, so we didn't have anything planned for that. But our attendance held strong all day.
Great. And I think that's information that, we certainly will look to, for these future events, is those analytics. I think that's a big key piece of this. Quinn, I'm going to ask you quickly, just, from the standpoint of our meeting today, what kind of analytics do you typically get when you host or produce a webinar like this? Is it, number of people? Is it location? Can you talk about that just for a brief second?
Yeah, it depends on the platform that you use, but you can get a number of really interesting statistics. Again, it could be from the city, country. You can get the peak times, and it will lay it out for you in a bar graph. They're fun to analyze, and you can kind of see, it's almost like you could definitely see if they didn't like certain parts of the show, just because you can see that the viewership dropped off, and it could be very detailed. Again, it's kind of dependent on the platform, but depending if you've got a robust platform, you can get a lot of great information, and it's time stamped as well. So you can look at the times, you can know what content you had, and you can specifically kind of examine it and study it and see where things might need to be changed or what really worked. That being said, it's you can also see technical difficulties as well. You can see if something if a problem occurred someplace, you can definitely tell if it dropped low or spiked when it came back on. So a lot of good analytics to divine from.
Great, thank you so much. And I think that also, moving forward, for those of us who are looking at, booking future meetings, vendors, that sort of thing in the virtual marketplace, I think that's a great question to ask of those vendors is, what do your analytics look like? Because, that's a great way to kind of gauge your attendance. Just because 600 people register doesn't mean 600 people view the meeting. And so I think that's an important question certainly to ask too. I think we have time for one more question, and the question is kind of, in the lines of the, if you bring in a vendor to help you with your virtual platform, Stacia, like you did, or and something goes wrong, there's a technical difficulty or something that causes the meeting to fail or something along those lines, what is the expectation from, or what should the expectation from the client be as far as asking, for a refund or that sort of thing? And I think that's something that I'll kind of take a stab at just from a contractual standpoint. I think that we have to be cognizant of the fact that these vendors put so much time and effort and hours into these programs. And obviously, if there is a glitch or a difficulty, those are conversations that you want to have. And, if it's a meeting that IMN is handling, that's something we will help you with. But, we have to be cognizant of the fact that they spend a whole lot of time planning this too. So while we would likely ask for, a discount or, maybe a credit towards a future meeting, it's not like we can just go back to someone and say, hey, thanks for the 150 hours you put in for our meeting. Now we would like you to, comp our whole meeting. So I think it's a great question, and it's a good thing to address. But I think it's great to pull in, people who've done this before too. And, like I said, if you're working with IMN, we know contracts like the back of our hands, and that's certainly something we can help you with too. So, obviously this is kind of a hot topic right now, this whole virtual landscape. We've got so many different things that we can still touch on, but we're running out of time today. So we're very grateful for our wonderful panelists who've shared insight, ideas, and suggestions that we can all use moving forward as we incorporate virtual into our new normal, whether that be, virtual meetings for the next few months or hybrid, probably for the foreseeable future. Also, another thank you to Mac Productions, who helped produce our webinar today. Very top of the line technical support and broadcasting, as well as our social media and marketing partner, Ingo, who really helped drive our attendance to this meeting. And one more shout out just personally to my colleagues at IMN, who have been working so hard behind the scenes, not only to put this webinar together, but who have fine-tuned our virtual event offerings and are able to assist kind of with your needs and questions. So if you have questions about your needs or just guidance in general, make sure you reach out to your IMN representative and talk to them. If you don't have one, you can call me. I'm happy to talk through that with you as well. Quinn and I have spent several hours on the phone talking about questions, and we have great partners who are also very willing to help. So again, a huge thank you to everyone involved and to our audience for listening today. We will be doing another series in our webinar soon, so keep yourselves up to date, and we look forward to seeing you next time.